Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you making some time to be with us today, and we've got quite a few things to get through. So let me get started and introduce our team to you. So my name is Derek Bell. I'm your host for today's session, and I have Adrian Jones and Sean Camello also on the line with us. So thank you guys for making some time to be with us. Just some housekeeping, standard housekeeping for webinars. We record them. Yes, you will have recordings available, and they'll typically be sent to you within a week or so from the webinar, along with access to a blog post with a bit more information and detail that you can access from there. Please feel free to ask questions as we move through the webinar. We'd love to get those questions, so please go ahead. All right, what's the plan for the next 45 minutes? So we offer the opportunity once you register, which you may hopefully have noticed, for you to submit any questions. And you can in fact come back to that point and ask questions at any point, and we'll always pick those up in light of the next session. So for our US and EMEA audience, we didn't actually have any questions, but there was a question submitted from one of our Australian folks, and I'll share that one with you because it's a good question and very topical for today. But we're going to look at the mechanics of the Eloqua form design editor to help you understand that a bit more. And remember that today's focus is kind of on the essentials. So if you've been using Eloqua for a long time, that's fine. Thank you for joining us. If you're newer to Eloqua, then I think today's session is really for you. So thanks again for joining. We'll look at some practical use cases to give you some idea beyond the form. What can I use them for? How else can I do this besides just putting an Eloqua form on an Eloqua landing page? Are there in fact other options? And there are. We'll also look at optimal form performance and kind of get a bit of a perspective around data and a data strategy and what that means. And then we'll look at the most recent release of Eloqua and then move into Q&A. But as I said, Q&A is kind of here for the duration of the session, so please feel free to include that. So the question from one of our Australian clients came from Jared, who's in Queensland in the north of Australia. And he said, how many fields is too many fields on a form? Which I thought the easiest way to answer that on a slide was to say, great question, because there are too many variables involved. But there is certainly some research that have been done by various bodies to give us a bit of an idea. Oracle Eloqua certainly did some a few years ago where they kind of analyzed all of the forms that you and I are building in Eloqua to look at abandonment and overall submissions, etc. And 7 seemed to be around the number, was the sort of the sweet spot, I suppose. But that research is a few years old now, so I kind of wonder if we've become a little bit more impatient, potentially, I'm not sure. But that seemed to be the magic number, at least. And the good thing about it, so much of the research that I see is very consumer-oriented, where people are buying laundry detergent from Amazon, and they don't want to answer more than 2 or 3 questions. And that includes their email address, right? And plus, they've got to put in credit card details. So the consumer examples are a little bit tougher, really, to try and to relate, I think, to the average Eloqua user who is more in a B2B or a high value type of transaction with the people that they're talking to. So, but hopefully as we move through today's session, I think there's more that we've got that hopefully will answer that question. Certainly did for Jared, I think, and hopefully it will be for you as well. So let's jump ahead. Okay, so form design editor and the mechanics. So what we want to do here is kind of get down to the basics, just to really understand the fundamentals, I suppose, of what is the form. So one of the first things to really get across is that Eloqua has lots of different functions and does lots of different things, and forms within Eloqua is its own piece, its own standalone little piece of application or software that sits within it. Now, it does work really nicely, obviously, with landing pages because we take forms, we put them on landing pages, but it is a little bit different potentially to some other applications that you may have used. And I had a client who had been using a range of Google products. And one thing they just could not get their head around was where the form existed and how it got hosted. So in the Google world, when they were playing with forms, Google, when you launch your form in Google, at least in their business suite, it's on a page. And Google automatically associates it to a page. They're They're kind of one result. It's one asset that you're playing with. It's not a form and a landing page. It's just simply a form that is clearly hosted on a landing page. And once we're able to get that, he was like, oh my gosh, okay, I get it. I understand now. Two separate assets, two separate things. So yes, two separate things, but they can work obviously really well together. And so we'll look a little bit more at that as we move through today. Once we get into the form, so now we've logged into Eloqua, we're looking at a form, and we're basically at the point now where we need to design the form. And so this is where you will create the fields that you need. So it's the email address, first name, last name, company name. You may have some drop-down pick lists, for example. That could be a range of different things or questions that you're wanting to ask people. And so that's where you design your form. Now, the word design, sometimes people will think of pretty colors and pictures and CSS, maybe all those sorts of fun things that you would do from a design point of view. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking just fundamentally about the design of the fields, okay? How they behave, how they function, the sequencing, the order they're in, those sorts of things. Okay, the second part of your form, and arguably the most powerful part of your form, are the processing steps. So the processing steps are the things that happen as soon as the person hits submit on the form. It's the processing steps that kick into play at the back end. And this is where it will create or update a contact. It's where we can talk to the CRM platform. We can talk to custom objects, take data from the form and move it into custom objects. We can talk to external servers. There's just a whole swag of things that can be done using the processing steps within the form. And they really are quite powerful. We can push people onto campaigns. We can send them confirmation emails. We can redirect them to multiple different pages based on the responses they give you within the form itself. So a whole range of things. And we'll have a closer look at that here in a moment. Okay, so what I thought to do, I thought we got 45 minutes. How do you teach someone about Eloqua forms from a basic point of view in 45 minutes? So I took an approach of what you kind of need to know. And so first one that you need to know is that the email address is actually the only field that you have to use on a form. So you can have a whole range of fields, or you can actually just have a single field, but that single field must be email address. Because as you know, it's the unique identifier that associates that submitted data from the person to the contact stored within Eloqua, or at least it needs to create a new contact should it be a new person that's going through that process. Point number two, that your form can pre-populate, and this is one of the key reasons people like to use Eloqua forms on Eloqua landing pages. So when you send an invitation to somebody, and hopefully you experience this yourself with Marketing Cube, you receive an invitation to join the user group this month. You reach our form. Now, the vast majority of that form should pre-populate with the details that you've previously provided to us. So that does a few things. It helps reduce form abandonment. It just makes it easier for you because you don't need to repeat the things you've already told us, which is good, and just generally offers a better experience to people. And so that's really a field merge, just like you would personalize an email in Eloqua to say good morning, Jenny, or good morning, Frank, or whatever the case may be. That first name is a field merge, and that field merge is doing exactly the same thing on your Eloqua form. And you may have noticed when you create the form, some of the fields will populate yellow. So those that are populating yellow tell you that it's in fact a field merge and will pre-populate for people who reach the form via your email. So that's kind of good news. All right, the form design editor has three types of design components. So we have the contact fields. This is where you select from all the different contact fields that you've got. You've then got the form elements. And so this is where you can start to design the form a little bit. If you need to put in a custom field of some sort, if you think about an event, potentially a registration event, you may ask the standard first name, last name, email, company name. That may be enough. And then in the context of the event, you might want to throw in some really random question. And it could be, what's your favorite coffee, or are you an orange juice person or a coffee person, or whatever the case may be. Just kind of a bit of fun, bit of engagement. Maybe you'll deliver people orange juices when they arrive, or a coffee. Great question to ask, bit of fun, gets people adding a bit more information. what are you actually going to do with that data? Look, it's highly unlikely that data really has any great value beyond the event that you're capturing it for. So it doesn't need to be sent off to the contact or stored anywhere. It really doesn't need to go to a custom object. It really could just stay in the form itself. And you can use it for reporting and whatever you need to do. You can export it, all that sort of fun stuff. So there's a whole swag of applications for these various form elements: checkboxes, radios, single checkboxes, multiple checkboxes. Hidden fields is great for slightly more advanced work that you may be doing. And then you've got field groups. Now you'll notice the field groups in this screenshot. Some of them are grayed out. Now, the ones that are grayed out are typically grayed out because you already have those fields in your form. So, and this particular screenshot was taken from, well, it was actually the user group form that you filled in to register to join us. So that's why they're grayed out. So they won't always be grayed out in your world. So they're all the bits and pieces that you have available to help you build out your forms. Now, what else do you need to know? Okay, so one thing to just make you aware of, not that we have time to show you how to do this today, but just to be aware of, and this is a fairly common mistake I see with newer users to Eloqua. They might have a multi-city event that's running, and might be across 6 or 10 cities, etc. And what they do is they create a form for every single and landing page for every single city. Not necessary. Okay, you can consolidate all of that into a single form on a single landing page. You don't have to have a form, a unique form for every single location. And there's some cool ways that you can do that, and you can do it code free. There's no need to be coding anything. You can use the conditional steps and your pick list. So the pick list on the form would display the number of cities and locations, and then we can do a whole swag of things on the back end of the form. So if someone registers for New York versus Albuquerque versus Denver versus Los Angeles or Toronto, whatever, we can then send them a very specific email with address details, etc., for the event in that city versus being generic. So very easy to do. It's not complicated, just a little bit of logic that you've got to apply and using your pick lists in order to do it. So, and it does save time for you, for sure. Look, and this one's really just a heads up. If you're using the Eloqua email signature, and you will be doing that from the campaign canvas, so you'll build out your emails, you will apply the signature block to your email, and then in the campaign canvas, you're selecting signature and choosing one of the two options that are available there. Great feature. However, you can't utilize that email signature function from a form. So if you want people to be sent an auto-respond email from the form, you can't use the email signature rule. Unsure why. Maybe one day that will change. But the workaround there is, instead of using the form to send you a confirmation email, what we can do is push people on to a campaign canvas. And so from the campaign canvas, you can do as you've normally done, and then use the campaign canvas to send the confirmation email. It probably takes 2 or 3 minutes longer to do that, because the form, sending an email or sending the submitter an email via the form processing steps is super fast. It's almost immediate. If we need to move them over to the canvas, there's just a bit of processing time there and maybe a couple of minutes in order to do that. So not a deal breaker. So point 6 kind of, plays into point 4 a little bit. But basically what we're able to do is, using the conditionally function of the form in the processing steps area, we can basically change what happens. So if they tell us over here that blue is their favorite color, we can give them a different confirmation page. We can send them a different confirmation email. We can put their data in a different location. Any type of response they give you in the form, you can use that logic of that response to deliver a whole range of different things to different people. So instead of you having to manually go into post or into form data following form submission, you can have Eloqua take care of it for you automatically. Number 7 is form templates. I can't get this one across to you enough. Going back and doing a save as of forms, especially if the need of that form is going to be a little bit different or significantly different to what you originally used it for, there's every chance you are going to end up with error messages. And those error messages you get are generally not the most insightful in relation to really helping you uncover the error. So then you need to kind of figure it out, and it just takes time. And if it takes time, chances are you could have just simply used a template or started a brand new form. The challenge with starting a brand new form is you have to remember all the processing steps, okay? And that can be a little bit challenging for if you're new, and plus it's time consuming. The template is by far the best option to play with, and I'll show you why and give you some tips and ideas on how to create those templates so they're more effective for the team as a whole, especially though for any newer members of your team. Number 8. So the form submission data, now that's available from the actions menu. When you're looking at the form, the actions menu is in the top right-hand corner. And that form submission data contains every single form submission and is not unique. Okay. Not unique is good, by the way, because from a form submission point of view, we want an absolute record of every single form submission. You can push people into using your form processing steps into a shared list. That's helpful because the shared list is unique. So even though Mary submits the form 25 times, if you're always pushing people into a respective or a shared list, then Mary will only be in there once. Okay, so it is unique, unlike the form. So that's good to understand the difference between the two. And you can delete the form submission testing data, and I will show you how to do that here in a moment, which is good because it enhances the quality of reporting, especially obviously in Insight, and just is a better use of your data and understanding what's going on. And point 10, point 10 is a repeat of point 7, and that's me placing emphasis on it, essentially. In the speed, consistency, from a data integrity point of view, there's just a whole range of reasons why creating form templates is a great thing to do. All right, let's jump in and have a closer look at the form design editor. All right, so here's one I created earlier. And here we go. So this is what I call an always-on form. And this particular form is basically, this is the question form. So if you fill in and ask a question for the user group, this is kind of what you see. And so just to emphasize again, so this is the design area. So this may look familiar to you. There's some other bits and pieces you've got over here where you can kind of control things like label alignment. Do you want it on the left or on the right? Do you want the actual title of the field to be on the left or the right, etc.? So you've got some room to play around there. I honestly don't change those a great deal, but it's personal preference and probably built into your design rules that you have. You also have an HTML name for your form, which is this one here. Now that has to be unique and it must be written in the format of HTML. And Eloqua, because it requires it to be unique, Eloqua will always create one for you. And I think it's just simply Eloqua form dash, and then it's a unique numerical value with about 10 plus numbers, I think, which is fine. It has to be unique, so that's why it's there. But you do have the ability to override it. And you can see that's exactly what I've done here. I've overwritten this one. And the key reason for that is that particular HTML name is included in, included in the email that gets sent to me and to members of our team, which is this one, a notification email, like so. And so the name of the form is then included in that, which is obviously far more helpful than some random code that means nothing to anybody. So something to think about. It just makes it a little bit easier if you are sending notification emails. It does make it easier for that recipient to kind of know what the form actually is. Now, we talked about the submission data. So that's available here under Actions menu. And you can see everything locked in there. You can also export from there as well, which can be helpful. Under processing. So the processing steps are quite extensive, and there's lots that you can see here. And now for new users, again, it can be a little bit daunting to jump in and be like, well, hang on a minute, which ones should I be doing and where do I need my data to go, etc. And again, that's where form templates make life so much easier for new users, but also for seasoned. And I promise you, it's exactly what we do here at Marketing Cube. We use templates for everything, and certainly for forms. It just saves time, and consistency is honestly the big key. Consistency around data is the key thing that I'm looking for. So what's going on here? Well, one we've got here is the first one, which is the most critical one, which is to actually update or create a contact with the form data that's being submitted. Doesn't say /create, but I promise you that's what it does. It updates or it creates if the email address is not found in the system. All of the field mapping, most of this occurs automatically. If it doesn't occur automatically, you can just double click here, locate the relevant contact field and assign it should you want to, and relevant rules that you can apply in that process as well. Then send submitter an email. So remember, this is the one that we would use most of the time. You may also call this the autoresponder. So send the submitter an email is different to sending a notification email. So a notification email is actually an Oracle Eloqua branded system-generated email. You have no control over what it looks like. It's really designed for an internal audience. It's never something you would send externally outside of the organization. So you can notice that there are two. Okay, so in this case, what I've done, I placed a condition on it. Yep. So making sure the person is actually opted in. If they haven't opted in, we sort of don't execute anything in the form. So this one is going straight to Derek. It always will go to Derek. However, this one I'm choosing, you can see here that you've got some options to play with. And these options enable you to control who gets the notification email. And so because I've got a field or a value of a form field sitting in the form, I'm going to use that. And because our sales team obviously is more than one person, is highly likely, here it is right here. And so it's a field merge. So what that will do is a known individual hits this page in the form and they hit submit, because if they're a known individual to us, Eloqua will have a salesperson assigned to that known person, and I'm able to pull in the email address of that salesperson. And then from there, I can automatically bring that information in here. And then that means only one member of the sales team will be notified versus me having to potentially put in the email address of every single salesperson and then having them receive all of them. So that's kind of crazy. We don't want to do that, right? So this just personalizes that. It means the salesperson is only going to receive a notification email that is actually relevant to them because it's their contact or lead that has actually submitted the form. Another important one that I do is to make sure that we always subscribe our contacts globally. So you may or may not have noticed on any of our forms, there is some opt-in language and a checkbox that you need to tick. And that's what that responds to here, or that's what that relates to here in the back end. Then we have some shared lists. So I have a shared list that I've set aside that is what I call all-time submitted questions. So that's just a shared list that grows and grows and grows and grows, and list anybody that has ever asked a question or submitted a question using the form. You've got a whole range of different ways you can play with that data. And it really does make a difference to really taking advantage of the automation in your marketing automation. While we have the campaign canvas, and that's fantastic, and I love it, don't get me wrong, I think a lot of the power around that automation that we talk about is also driven here from the processing steps on a form. They really are incredibly powerful, incredibly flexible in what they can do. So the other thing I wanted to show you quickly, and I'll try and actually use the form for this month's user group because it's live data and I don't think I've cleaned it already. So let's have a look. Yeah, here we go. So I showed you I mentioned that with submission data, you've got the ability to get rid of test information. So if I go back to the bottom of that list, I can see we have Adrian, Sean, and Derek doing a little bit of testing. And so what I can do is actually right click on that and say exclude from reporting and say exclude, and I'm done. So now when I look at my reporting, and I mean, you know, it's like when you're doing campaign testing, etc. If you're getting extended members of the team to kind of help you go through that testing, you might end up with 5, 10, 15 different form submissions that have absolutely nothing to do with your campaign. They're purely for testing. And then depending on the size of your campaign, those numbers can impact results. So just get rid of them. You're not deleting, just so we're crystal clear, you're not deleting those people in any sense. All you're doing, as the language says, is to exclude them from reporting. That's it at the end of the day. Nice little tip to help you get a better result from some of your reporting. All right, let's have a look. What happens next? So, in relation to where is the form being used is probably the key question. Okay, for many, that Eloqua landing page is where your form will be hosted, but there are other options. Okay, and those other options include your CMS. So, and that would be typically a one-to-one relationship. By that I mean a single form in Eloqua connected to a single form on your CMS. Another option, however, is a one-to-many relationship where you may have a single form in Eloqua actually connected to multiple forms on your website. Think, for example, if your website has sort of a contact us form on a whole bunch of pages, not just simply a single page with contact us, but actually you repeat the contact us form on many pages. Okay, if that's the case, that's fine. That's cool. That's part of a design that works. What you don't want is to have 30 forms sitting in Eloqua to match that whole process. And so we can do a one-to-many relationship as well. Let's have a look at a couple of options. So with the Eloqua user group this year, you may have noticed we've started playing with the pop-up form, or what Eloqua refers to as a lightbox hyperlink. That's just one way. This is native, zero code required in this process, easy to do. So you're actually adding a button. You then add a hyperlink to the button, and the hyperlink is the type lightbox. And then from there, you'll be able to see how you drop in your form and get that to function. I think it has multiple applications. We really just wanted to kind of showcase it for you to experience, just in case you weren't aware. We thought the best way to do that is to show you just another way to do things. But let me just quickly, while I've got that there, I've got a couple of others here I just wanted to show you. Yeah, so that's the repeat. That's the one I just showed you in the slide that you can see there. The other way, and probably the most common way, is to have the form simply sitting on the page. Okay, so that's another way to do it. If we go over to Oracle, so this is actually from the Oracle website. From the Oracle website, there's a call to action to register or watch the replay. This particular webinar has passed, but it's now available on demand. So if I click on register today, it asks for my email address. So if I type in my email address and then hit continue. Now, Oracle knows who I am because I've filled in a million of their different forms. And so I pretty much at this point, I can give them my email address and Shazam, I'm straight into it. But they do use progressive profiling. So if it would appear I've probably answered all the questions in the progressive profiling. That's why I just go straight through to the keeper. But you might have a slightly different experience depending on how many times you've interacted with them. But that's just another way to present forms. Now, that experience does require a little bit of coding. It's a little bit different in the way that it works. But the thing is, you can do it and do it once, and then it's done. And you can then deliver that same experience. And as long as you're using templates, with a little bit of CSS, JavaScript magic built into them that you don't need to touch at any point, then you too can deliver a similar experience to that one. So yeah, just a couple of different examples for you to see there. All right, practical use cases for different campaigns and some clever ones. Okay. All right, so forms I find can typically be grouped into three areas. I mean, this is all up for debate and some may argue with me, but this is my general experience at least. So we have general types of forms: inquiries, contact, feedback, service request, even perhaps an application form. It's kind of an application form doesn't change a great deal. It's fairly consistent. From a marketing point of view, yeah, then there's a whole range of things you're doing. You're creating competitions, and if you're a university, it's course outlines or even offering thought leadership, prospectus, NPS and surveys is kind of a fun one. If you've not really thought about using Eloqua for that, we have a number of clients, especially with the NPS side of things. A calculator. Did you think the Eloqua form could be a calculator? Now, you or I couldn't quite get it to achieve that. I mean, I can't do anything in HTML. That's why we have a team that does all that kind of cool stuff. But yeah, we have absolutely built forms in the past for a client that was in finance, and their clients needed to be able to understand what their rebate was going to be, I think it was, at the end of each quarter. And so they could come to this website, which was an Eloqua landing page, an Eloqua form, and they'd put in a bunch of details into the form, hit submit. The form would do some mathematics and calculations and let them know what their rebate was going to be. So there's multiple applications. Forms are not just simply sitting there waiting to receive information. They can actually be really quite intelligent in what they do. So don't underestimate them. And then, of course, the LinkedIn and Facebook connectors, lead generator, that's obviously forms connecting to each other, that one. Then I kind of figure it's kind of we're registering for something, and it could be a webinar, it could be an in-person event, a conference, a ball, even internal staff events. So it's kind of three basic groupings that I would apply there. Now, how do I use the form, and what are the most common use cases for your Eloqua forms? So the option A one is kind of the one we looked at there a little bit earlier, where I showed you the Eloqua form sitting on the Eloqua landing page. You can do the pop-up as I showed you, or you can have the form sitting straight there on the page, whichever one you kind of want to play with. You've got options there. Option B. So our second play is to look at reposting. So reposting is the ability, and this is fairly standard for newer users or newer clients using Eloqua. First thing they typically want is their contact us form on the website to no longer go into the CMS. They would much prefer that data to go into Eloqua. And a big reason people do that is because they generally want to use or take advantage of those processing steps that we talked about, because those processing steps enable that data to be captured, sit within the form within Eloqua, and then from there we can send it into the CRM. One of the really nice things is you avoid any duplicates as well. So there are some platforms where the CRM provides you with a web-based to lead type of situation. Handy, but it's just duplicate city. It's the duplicates, right? So the advantage of coming through Eloqua is that we streamline that and make sure there are no duplicates. And if the person already exists, whether as a lead or contact, that can simply be updated. It's not going to create a second one. It does make for a much nicer experience. It does enable you to take advantage of those processing steps, meaning that you can use the form to send a thank you email. Thank you for filling in our contact us form. We'll be with you shortly. So much easier to do. So we call that reposting, essentially. So what Eloqua does, it generates code or HTML for every single form, regardless of you using it or not. The code is sitting there. And you hand that to your web developer, and your web developer will put that behind the CMS. So now when people fill in that form on your CMS, the data that is submitted is actually taken over to Eloqua and processed. And from there, work its way into the CRM, should you need it to. So reposting. Then option C. Option C largely kind of follows what happened with option B, but it's just more advanced in the way that it works. So it could be something like this. You might have multiple websites. Now, if you're dealing with multiple brands, that's fine. We can still manage that, actually. But imagine if you've got multiple brands here and you had a contact us form on all of those. You could, in fact, have them all pointing to a single form within Eloqua. And Eloqua can manage what happens at the back end of that form, i.e. sending the submitter an email and those sorts of things, because it's intelligent enough to know that when you were on website B for Bravo, it knows that you were on website B for Bravo. Therefore, it will deliver an experience that's connected to website B for Bravo. Okay, it's not just going to be a single generic response. So it's smart enough to know where it was. Now, that may not be an overly common experience for many of you on the call. I'm just kind of having a look. Okay. But a slightly more common application for you could be this one, where now we're talking about a single website, so your website, and in that website, you've got multiple pages. And perhaps it plays back a little bit to that experience or the example I gave earlier with the contact us form. So you may have a contact us form across your website on various pages. It's exactly the same form, but previously it was just going into the CMS. What we can do is change that. So now they all go into the Eloqua form. And again, the form is smart enough to know which page the person was on. Okay, so I think if you've got lots of white papers, for example, you don't want to have to create a corresponding form for every single white paper in Eloqua. What you can do is using some pretty smart HTML and a little bit of magic, you can have the Eloqua form know that it was this white paper that the person was downloading, therefore I need to send them this information. And that can be done through a single form. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you might get the pun there with the ring in the background, one form to rule them all. If you haven't seen the movie, it won't mean anything to you, but okay. Optimal form performance. So this is where the data strategy really drives home, I think, how successful you're really going to be. One of the points I wanted to try and make here is that forms really are very rarely fun or interesting. Well, maybe they're interesting, but they're certainly not fun. But they are such a powerful part of Eloqua. And as I said, when we talk about marketing automation, the form often gets forgotten and we focus very much on the campaign canvas, which I get, I understand, that's cool, that makes sense. But the processing steps at the back end of your form can do so much of the heavy lifting and your data manipulation that you need. And to automate it, yeah, it's really quite clever what it can do. So what I wanted to do here was just kind of give you some things to think about in relation to your data strategy. And essentially, when you're presenting people with a form, you're typically going to be asking either demographic style questions, which you can see here, and some of those can be more basic. And where most of this data would go typically is going to be onto the Eloqua contact. So a person's occupation, language is spoken, home ownership status, maybe you're in finance, income level, education level, zip code. The other really critical thing, obviously, is a lot of this is personally identifiable information. So you need to be, really careful with this data, obviously, in relation to where it's stored and how you work it and what you do with it and how you use it to segment and slice and dice and go back. But the other type of questions that you ask are the psychographic questions. And these are the questions that will differ. Now, if you're a university marketer versus a financial services marketer versus a heavy machinery or a manufacturing type of marketer or a tech marketer, these are all going to differ, okay? But these types of questions are often super valuable to the salesperson because they give a little bit more of an insight into that individual. And so we move on to sort of attitudes and opinions. And you may ask questions based on, again, it can be very campaign specific. It could be in the context of a new product. I'm not here today to instruct you on how to ask questions. What I'm trying to get across here is that when you capture this information, some consideration needs to be put into where that data is then stored. Some data, as I said earlier, can live in the form and not move beyond the form. That's it. However, you've got your Eloqua contact and you've got custom objects. And typically, the things that we store in the contact are those things that generally absolute and don't change a great deal. The only real difference there is maybe people's job titles will change, obviously, and maybe their office addresses or home addresses, those things might change a little bit. But generally, those demographics are reasonably solid, okay? However, people's opinions, their values, their attitudes, those sorts of things may fluctuate. And so using a custom object to store some of that data can be a more effective way to do it because the way they respond to the question this month could be different to how they respond to that question in 5 or 6 months. And so do you want to keep record of the difference or do you want to override it? There's a whole range of questions that I would sort of want to go through with you to have a chat about that and to understand the best use of that data. Lifestyle habits. So again, if maybe it's, how often do you travel and how do you spend your weekends? These are very emotive, psychographic questions. So just have a think through where they need to go. But the final point I will make here is that if at the end of the day, our goal as marketers is to deliver marketing qualified leads through to the sales team, then we need to be asking the right questions. So these other psychographic questions are kind of fun, they're insightful, they're interesting, but are they in fact the key questions that you need to be asking as marketers to get across to the sales team a marketing qualified lead. Going back to my earlier point in relation to templates, that's where templates come in. So you could create a template that is really designed for lead capture. And that lead capture form contains probably progressive profiling would be the smartest way to do it. All the questions that you need, where sales have said, these are the pieces of information that we need. By using a template, you'll always include them and then be able to chip away and slowly add the responses from campaign to campaign. If you're not using a template, especially when you've got a range of very specific questions that the sales team have given you, then it becomes difficult for you to remember. So progressive profiling can definitely be your friend in that process. All right, release 24A. Let's jump in and we'll wrap up here in just a few moments. So this is largely a recap on what we mentioned last month. If you'd like to subscribe to our important update subscription, you can scan that QR code and you'll get more information sent through. The Oracle Zoom app, so that's the app developed by Oracle for Zoom clients, is now generally available. And you should also be aware that Zoom have also released an updated app as well just recently. And so their app also encompasses their event product, which I understand is Zoom sessions as well as Zoom events. So the Eloqua, as well as I think meetings. So it's meetings. Essentially, it really depends on which Zoom product you're using as to which app you're going to use. If you're using Zoom events, which includes sessions, then you'll need to use the Zoom app. If you're just using webinar and meeting, then the Oracle app will suffice for what you need to do. And the big change with the Oracle app is it now enables you to bring in meeting IDs and information, not just webinar. So that's the big change. The generative AI enhancements. So for those Eloqua clients who have purchased the AI add-on for Eloqua, subject line recommender, there's some work happening there, but it is in limited controlled availability. So sort of jump in if you can, jump in that program. You'll find information in Topliners for that. Additional security is always a good thing. The webhook app for Eloqua has now gone GA. So yes, it is generally available with 24A. And so that's pushing contact data to third parties from Eloqua campaigns or programs. Okay, so it's a bit geeky, but it's kind of cool. And it's something that people have been asking for a little while. So great to see that addition. Email bounce processor enhancements, etc., a whole range of different things as well. So we should start to see changes in the hard bounce numbers. In the past, you've had to potentially go back in to reset individuals, while Eloqua is told by email packages that that person is a hard bounce. Meanwhile, the sales team were like, well, no, I've been emailing Billy for the last 3 weeks, and I promise you he's still there alive and kicking. So there's a discrepancy there, right? So we go back in and we can reset the status for Billy to ensure that he receives emails again from Eloqua. But with the refining of that process, hopefully we'll start to see less of that discrepancy occurring. All right. So Q&A, there was a question submitted, and JR, I can see you're on the call. And so JR had picked up, and it's ironic because this is form related, and thank you, JR, for letting us know, where you select a country, which is a standard field on all of our forms. Now, if you're in Canada, the United States, or Australia, you will then see a second drop down to nominate which state or territory or province that you're from. And I think, if I remember, JR, what you had identified is, and I assume maybe you selected the wrong country in error, and then you changed the country, but the drop-down list of states or territories or provinces didn't follow. So, for example, you maybe selected Canada, then you changed it to USA, but when you changed it to USA, all you saw was Canadian territories and provinces. Okay, so that has been rectified. That was something that in our testing I didn't kind of pick up. So if you change it from any of those three, they're the only three that we ask for: states, territories, or provinces. If you change it to Japan or France or Uganda, that's fine. That's only a single question. Thank you for that. We appreciate you providing that feedback, and we got our boffins onto that, and it's all been rectified. So thank you. If the same thing happens again, only because you've obviously done this a few times, you might need to do a hard refresh because there might be just cookies and things that are holding on to some of that historical data. I had to do a hard refresh in order to make that to work. But if there are any questions, I would love to hear those. Thank you again, JR, for that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm happy to hang here on the line. So our format now, hopefully you've picked up, is we're trying to do 45 minutes. And then if you need to go, that's fine, off you go. But if you wanted to hang around and either ask questions or listen to the questions, you're more than welcome to do that. So that's the plan for this year. Now, next month will be all about lead nurture campaigns. So we asked last month people to vote on what they wanted to hear about this year and lead nurture following forms. And we will do a more advanced form session later this year. We've got some fun things planned there to share with you. But next month is all about lead nurture campaigns. So again, you can go back to that question page anytime in your confirmation emails. You'll find that. So, or you can actually just go to myeloqua.com. Can you believe that? We bought that domain. How fun is that? myeloqua.com. And you'll find the form submission or question page on there as well. So feel free to do that. Otherwise, I'll hang around here for a few moments. And if we do have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining. So we really appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day and weekend. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.